Hey, welcome, everybody. Any announcements from IPSO? Any announcements from our department chair, Dr. Rich? Anything? Okay, start with a word of prayer, and then we'll turn the time over to Stephanie West. Where is she?
Right here.
There you are. Good. Okay, Will, start us with a word of prayer, please.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, for giving us for the opportunity we have to come together as members of this department to learn from each other and celebrate members of our department's successes and look forward to different things and opportunities that we have to be a part of this program. Heavenly Father, we ask you that would bless us, that I can be open and be receptive to the things that we've spoken about, and that the Spirit will be with us when we pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Stephanie, time's yours. Who are our moderators for this week? Okay, have we?
Steven. Yeah.
So will you make sure that you get your questions to me within an hour or two after? And then I'll post them.
You're the one that uploaded.
Send them.
Yep.
Stephanie, thanks, Mike.
All right. All right, welcome to seminar this week. This week we're just going to be focused. Well, 2 weeks ago we had the AECT International Convention in Las Vegas, and we had a lot of students that presented. So this is a chance for you to see some of the research that your fellow students have been doing, as well as for them to also for you to kind of get an idea of what it's like to present at a conference and to see what different options are available for presentations, because we hope that everyone here, if you haven't presented before, has that option in the future. So we have 9 different groups that are presenting. The title of this we called Combating Imposter Syndrome, because I know that's how I felt the first year that I went and presented. But really, it's just to get to know the research and the different opportunities for presentations. And AECT, which is the Association for Educational Communications and Technology, is kind of the conference or association for our field. And so that's why so many of the students and faculty go to this each year. So we have 9 groups. They're going to have 4.5 minutes, and it'll be just kind of like almost like an elevator pitch of their research. And then we'll have 30 seconds each one. And I do have a timer, and I'll let you know. Let's see, we're presenting. The clicker right there. Oh, perfect. Yeah. All right, so our first group is going to be Rachel Wadham and Heather Francis.
So Heather's online, but I'm going to do the talking. And before I start, I'm going to do a quick commercial break. You may have seen an email I sent out to you about a 1 credit class that Dr. Isaac Calvert is coming to do for our department this winter semester. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to learn from an amazing scholar, and I want you all to be fellow students in my class. So please sign up for it. 515R Spirituality and Education. Dr. Calvert is amazing, and he's quite literally at my request pressured to come down here and teach this class. So I would love for you guys to be a part of it, because his research is just absolutely amazing. And if you have any questions about it, let me know. So end of commercial break. So Heather Francis and I presented on our research that we're doing for the Arts Partnership. The Arts Partnership is a group that works with all of the public schools in the state to get teachers training about how to do arts integration, how to include arts, visual arts, music, dance, all of that in their coursework. One of the things that we were really interested in is that we wanted to include Native American issues in this arts integration. And there's some sensitive issues about cultural appropriation, as well as how do we represent our Native American partners and what is appropriate to represent from our Native American partners. And so we found that there was a lot of barriers, not only with the Native American partners that we worked with, but also with our teachers who didn't understand this kind of communication. So we decided to develop some personas to help us come on the same page and understand that. So we developed a range of personas. We did research and developed these personas, which is a process that you all will learn or have learned in one of your classes. And we really found that this was a really beneficial experience. So we talked about the development and how we developed them, and then a little bit about each of the personas. If you want more information on that, let us know and we'll talk more about that. But we really we really found that the application of personas to understand our learners' needs, experiences, and behaviors, which is the standard for personas, really, really made a difference here. And it was cool because it was cross-cultural. So we got to understand the culture of our Native American partners and the needs of our Native American partners from their own cultural perspective. But additionally, our Native American partners got to understand the culture of schooling and the culture of education and the culture that our teachers were bringing to the table and why they were asking for some of the things that they did. So this really was a cool process for us. One of the unique things about this is that this was actually a collaborative design process. Usually with personas, or in some situations with personas, you go and you study the people, and then you come back and as a team and create personas, and then you use them for your design. But we actually collaboratively created these with our partners. So the process was much more deeply embedded. And I think even with the outcome of the personas, that process really made a huge difference. We're using them in all kinds of situations. Stephanie has used them in her work with a course that she's created for us, and we've used them in training and all kinds of things. So it was a really amazing project, and something that we've all learned in class, learned how to do application, okay? Additionally, I also presented with my colleague, Lynette Christensen, who we presented on an open access project that we did for one of my research projects. I made an ed tech book for a professional development program that we used and implemented and assessed in that program. One of the major challenges I had with that project was copyright restrictions, right? There's tons of those, and I had to face them directly. There was some interesting visual design things because the items that were published originally in print needed to be changed for this format. And our individuals are a much more mature generation of scholars, and they still love paper. And we had some misunderstandings, some challenges with that. And then as well as some misunderstandings about just what open access is and how do we use it and how do we integrate it. So we talked about those challenges as well as the benefits. So just as next person is coming up, the reality of this is both of these projects came out of work that I was doing in classes or projects. So it's not imposter syndrome if you're getting up and talking about work that you're absolutely already doing. So this was my project, that was my work, and I was able to have 2 presentations at the conference just because I shared what I know. So
Rachel's awesome. The next presenter is Melissa Kavan, and she's online with us today. So I'm going to skip forward to hers. And Melissa, if you could unmute yourself, just tell me and I will forward your slides for you.
Okay, sounds good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. So yeah, this was my first year going to AECT, and it was interesting. It was fun, learned a lot. But I did 2 presentations. One of them was roundtable, and then one was it was an impact session. So the roundtable one is this first one here, and it's on what I did my master's project on, my master's thesis or defense. There we go. The QR code that's there, you can, if you use that, you'll have access to my whole slide there if you would like, but there's also a link to my paper. So what my project was, so it's called Implementation of Student-Centered Teaching Methods Among STEM Faculty. And if I could have you go to the next slide.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. And you can just click through until we get the stuff up there. Perfect. Back one. Okay. So yeah, basically, I looked at, there was this thing called STEMFI, and it's where faculty in the STEM field can go and they learn about incorporating active learning into their classrooms. And so they go through this program and, workshops and cohort meetings and things like that. And then once they're done, they're supposed to incorporate these active learning techniques into their classroom. Okay, if I could have you go to the next one. So where I came in with this is I would look at what happens after they're out of the STEM 5 program. So after they've learned how to incorporate active learning, what did they do a year or so, a year or two after? Are they still incorporating what they learned? What things helped them? What things didn't? How would they improve things? That kind of stuff. Next one. So I ended up doing interviews and I did some survey stuff, and then I used an Attride-Sterling, the Attride-Sterling model to come up with different themes. So these are the ones that I came up with. And like I said, like if you want to look at these at some point, you can look closer at them, but those are the themes I came up with. Next one. So as far as results, a lot of the faculty that I talked to did find benefit in the program, and they were still incorporating certain things. There were pros and cons, of course, to the whole thing. And some of the things that they found most helpful in continuing on was talking with other colleagues, and then also reading up on literature. And then having also one instructor that I found this really interesting. One thing that they would do if students came to them with like a question about something like, hey, we'd really like our Canvas, we'd really like the presentations put on Canvas. The instructor said, okay, he had the students go research if that was something that was beneficial or not and report back to him. But it was one way for him to incorporate in active learning of having the students do some of the research rather than him just telling him, this is what research says about these particular things. Next one.
Sorry, that's because I clicked on Zoom.
And Melissa, you have just over a minute left.
Okay. And then, so after talking to them, some of the kind of implications, or there's also like kind of future things that can be done. But the one thing that came out in all of them was that the faculty want a refresher course. They would love to keep doing the active learning stuff, and they would love some sort of refresher course that helps them to continue doing what they're doing. And they found it helpful overall, the program helpful, but there are suggestions they had, but they'd love some sort of refresher course as well. Okay, next one. So that was my roundtable one, and that one was fun because people could just come and talk to me, and it was very low key. My impact session stressed me out a lot because I had to like do an interactive activity, and I had like an hour to talk about this stuff. And but in the end, I ended up presenting Thursday morning at 8 a.m. So there was a total of 4 people there, 2 of which I invited. So it was really interesting because I had to like modify how I was doing the interactive activity, but it was basically on this DBL model that I've been working on, and I incorporated into my biology classes. So there's a QR code as well if you want access to the whole thing, but if you could go to the next one.
And you're out of time, so.
Okay. So yeah, this is just basically what I do in my biology class. And I basically talked about that and the benefits of using DBL in different fields. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, but it's not.
I'm Erin Miesel.
Hi, I'm Bobby Edinburgh.
And we presented on a design project that we did for BYU Online called Embedding Learning Resources Online Courses. I don't think you really want to read the abstract, but if you're there, I'm sure they'll share this with you. So Bobby and I, did you present last year with us? You just came. Okay, so this is my second time going to AEC, and AEC does a really good job of supporting its grad students, so and going, but second time was better. So if you don't have a great time the first, do it again. We were actually really surprised because we got a lot of people at our session. Like we expected 2 or 3 people, and there were 40, 50. Wow. Yeah, it was like crap. Because usually you don't get anybody to come to this. And I think the reason that we kind of determined maybe it was just a lucky time, but really because it was a design and it wasn't research. So if you have a design
and you're doing something, they work really well in this. You don't have to have this big research thing. You can do something. And if you don't have a design, come work for BYU Online, talk to me and I'll give you one. So we're looking at ways to support immediate student needs by embedding certain links to learning resources in our Canvas courses.
Yeah, so like we're trying to provide support to learners in an asynchronous environment with that just-in-time help, which is really tricky because you're not there and you're not present to give it to them. And so basically what we did is we went through and tried to identify kind of some main areas that we thought students seem to need help in that, and then we created these, they're really open access Canvas pages that we embedded into other Canvas courses using iframes. So this is like a picture of each of the iframes.
How many of you have seen one of these in your Canvas course? Woohoo, we did that.
Yeah. So essentially, and then we tried to place them pretty strategically based on hopefully like when the timing might be important. So like with the very first one, it connected you to resources about learning strategies. So that was placed really early on in the course. So maybe in a second put that one in. And it takes you into test taking strategies and time management, organization ideas, so it kind of just has these links to resources that would be helpful, hopefully at a just-in-time moment. And then, so that was the learning strategies is the first one. And then the second one was learner support. So that comes a little bit later, and that's all about like, it has ideas about how do you reach out to a professor? How do you get help from a TA? What are the resources on campus that you could have access to? Those kinds of like, connecting you to a resource essentially. And then later in the course, the 10th week, we looked at learner wellness resources, stress management and other, actually lots of different kinds of wellness, mental, spiritual, physical wellness, a lot of activities. And then learner motivation was the last one. And this one was kind of more about growth mindset in case you actually are not meeting your goals of what you had hoped, but to kind of see it in this broader perspective of learning and growth. So, and then we don't have all of our slides up here, but essentially if the learner clicks into that resource, then there's the first level, it's kind of tiered. The first level just gives a very quick overview of a few ideas. And then you can scroll down to find more in-depth resources. So hopefully they can be useful. We're still working on getting data back to know how useful they are and where they're being used and not used. So it's definitely a design project in process.
Yeah, and that's what I would say. You don't have to have it all figured out. It doesn't have to be publication ready. It doesn't, let's throw it out there and let people have conversations about it. And, this one, I wouldn't have exactly would have put this out there, but this is a good opportunity to do it. Say, this is what I'm working on. And then we even got some ideas or how you're doing that or where do you go from here? Next one we could present on what the pages actually look at and how they evolved, the landing pages that they're going at. So don't feel like you have to have everything figured out or be dissertation ready before you can publish.
Oh, sorry.
Do you want me to click it for you or do you want to do it? Would it be helpful? I can totally click it. Yeah, will do. It's fun. Okay. So this was my second year at ACT. I actually helped with 3 different presentations. We're gonna kind of go backwards through the week. And exactly why we're doing that, if you want to go to okay. So for my thesis, I presented this 2 weeks ago. I'm defending tomorrow, so I'm not going to go too far into it. If you want to come tomorrow, it'll be right here. For my thesis, I was looking at the computational thinking practices and the coding practices of teacher educators throughout the state of Utah. Pre-service teachers are learning this stuff. They are expected to teach it when they go into the schools. And these teacher educators are the ones who actually have the most influence on them. So we wanted to know what's happening there. So if you want to know what's happening there, come tomorrow, right here, 12 o'clock. So that was a concurrent session. If we want to move on. So for the last
15 months or so, I've been involved in a GSA research group. We focus on microlearning. And they had created a video checklist of all the things that you should consider when you're making a microlearning video. And back in January or so, we started making an infographic checklist. We based it on the video checklist and then changed it just a little bit. It's based on things like cognitive load theory and cognitive theory of multimedia learning, other theories like that. It has accessibility things. It has copyright things. It's going to have diversity, equity, and inclusion things. That's in the next iteration because this is design-based learning, design-based research. And so we had a round table for this. We do have one more person who did not come with us to present, but you want to go to the next slide and see a little bit of what this looked like. So Irene actually teaches a multimedia course for teachers. And so we made up this first checklist based on the video checklist. And then we got some of these different designs from her students. And we kind of saw what they did. We got their feedback through surveys, finding out what it is that they thought of our survey, what needed clarification, what they saw. And then we took that, we clarified things, and we made version 2, which you can kind of see over here. And they wanted to see things like bullet or check boxes instead of bullets so that they could go through and check things off. And this kind of helped to address the gap in research. As you're going through, there's really nothing to help with the design part of microlearning. There's all this stuff about actually like thinking about it. And then you get to the part where you go ahead and create it and there's nothing. So this is kind of to help address that part. This QR code takes you to our handout. If you're interested in our handout, it has more about these differences between the first and second iterations. And kind of, I don't remember all of what's on there. There's statistics, there's all sorts of information on there, including contact information. If you want to learn more, we can definitely give you more information. And if you want to go to the next one, you got about a minute. Okay. This one's I'm going to be pretty short on this one. This is one that I got pulled into last second where I joined the group. They had submitted something to compete in the RTD Theory Spotlight competition. And we got invited to participate this year, like 2 weeks before. So that was great fun. And the person who was actually involved in creating this theory couldn't be there. So they were trying to pull in everybody that they could. And that's how I ended up in this one. I'll go to the next one. So we actually ended up winning the People's Choice Award. We had to create a 10-minute video. Anybody who voted for that, I did put it in the group chat. So I'm sure at least some of it is due to you guys. And so we got the People's Choice Award. There are 3 other awards that they gave out. We just basically had to go in and describe what this theory was. And this particular theory came from that same research group. And it's called the Theory of Learning in Micro. And it talks about, the different considerations that need to be made, formal learning and informal learning, creating them in informal and formal spaces and making sure that they match and things like that. And we had this great example of a Barbie cake that was created in an formal setting, and then someone tried to replicate it in an informal setting and it just did not work. It was a disaster. It was pretty great. And I believe that's my presentation.
All right, Tyler.
Right. So you've heard people talk about roundtables. That's what I did as well. It's a little less formal than a presentation. You sit there and sort of wait for people to come to you or not. So thank you to Dr. McDonald for coming, because there were 2 people that came. And then a few more ended up coming. One was the Get a Photo with Rick contest that ISU had. Anyway, because it is less formal, I'm going to treat this as less formal. So let's have a little interaction if we could. Could you? Oh, sorry, I have it. Okay, here is my QR code. So who of you have earned open badges before? Oh, great, excellent. And are those that have earned them, are you interested in earning more in the future? Okay, a couple. All right, so that's sort of what the study is. We're looking at 371, 372, 510, and then also badges in the library. And those are certainly voluntary and they're skills-based, like vector graphics, some other ones, but Photoshop, video creation. And so people have really gone out of their way to seek those and earn them. So we've sent out a survey. We've collected a bit of data at this time. We only had 20 responses. We now have over double that. So this is an evolving thing. And what we're looking at is, does interaction with a badge make you want to earn more badges? And so what we're finding is yes and no, strangely enough. Why do you, those of you who have earned them and want to earn more, why would you want to earn more? Yeah, thanks, Stephanie.
Well, I like being able to recognize something that isn't typically recognized in a classroom, like something that I'm learning or doing that isn't typically recognized. So I like the recognition.
Great. Yeah, that's an excellent way. Anyone else, Krista?
I'm shaking my head because Stephanie it's like,
Okay.
it allows you to have credentials without like, full degree in this, but just like to show someone like I was trained in this or whatever.
I only have a couple right now, but I'm like, I put it on my website, but it looks so sad and lonely. And I just have one. So I'm like, okay, I need to earn a couple more. I put it up just to showcase the one.
That's an interesting motivation. No.
Competency, like I feel like once I do a badge, like it's like requirements, right? Once I check them off, it's like, hey, I finished a task, I'm learning something. And yeah, it makes me want to have another one because it's like, oh, I've already done one, I can do another, learn skills.
Great. Steve.
I feel like it helps you to show what you're learning. Like you just happen to learn so fast in this day and age that sometimes you just breeze past and you're like, oh, did I do that? You know, it helps you remember.
Those are all excellent reasons. Some of the reasons we found that people don't is they feel like they're just another grade, another step that you have to perform in the class. And that's more for how it's structured in the class and achievement. And so it really comes down to design. And a lot of the literature talks about, you know, you have to structure it well so that it's not just something on that you have to do and be done with. Also, we've seen some issues with technology, people having an inability to post the badges once they've earned them. And then also some of the way it's designed, it's not really as a proper open badge. It's just like, it's a badge, but it's not really like, you wouldn't really show this on your resume or something. So that's where we're at, and it's going to continue. Any questions? Just a pitch for AECT is my first time. It was great. And you don't need to be afraid. There's a lot of scaffolding there for you. Yes.
Where was it this year and where will it be next year?
It was Las Vegas. Next year is Orlando.
Right across the street from Hollywood Studios. Not that you would go because you'd be at the conference, but. Yeah.
As you can tell, the format's changed kind of on our slides and covering part of our names.
Hey, guys.
You've got Amelia Hill and Jessica DeMold. But we went to AECT. We've presented at other conferences, but this was our first time presenting at like an instructional design conference. Our background is obviously in language, but we're studying instructional design. So we did integrating technology into the blended language classroom and kind of like what that looks like. So we did an impact practice session, which is 60 minutes long. So you kind of have something to present for an hour, some interactive parts, and then for them to ask you questions. And this is like an overview of what we did. So we went over some instructional design frameworks. So these are the three. We kind of went over learning affordances, different types of interactions in the PICRAT model, how they relate to second language acquisition theories, which we didn't go into depth presentation, but we actually had lots of people that were instructional designers for languages and who feel completely lost because it is such a different thing to do. In our session that came with lots of questions. So we kind of show how you can relate the two. And then we showed examples of each of these theories, instructional design theories applied to second language acquisition theories and what that looks like in practical real life examples.
So basically we tapped into, these are just the visual of what Jessica just spoke to. But when we look at like the time, space, and fidelity and high and low, we would tap that into the way language is instructed with those modes of communication. So speaking, reading, listening, and writing, and then obviously like national tendencies. And what we do is kind of tap into the way that all of this is like good. And you're just trying to intentionally mold it so it hits the outcome you fancy those students to understand and to have their proficiency increased in the land that they end up coming into. And then with types of interactions, we're basically, again, inviting instructors to see the ways you can interact. Again, in language, there's kind of three prominent interactions, so interpersonal, presentational, or interactive with content. And you can do all of those in those different modes too, with content interactive, maybe presentational, with students as we are to you today in a presentational format, and maybe interpersonal as you connect to a student or a teacher, or maybe to a visual content piece, maybe you're interacting to a recording. And what we would do is when we build our courses with languages, we base it on ideas from PICRAT. So what is it that our outcome is? How can we intentionally move or transfer content that maybe prior was in person and now to online mediums that are kind of foreign to the language world? And so what we're trying to fancy for the people to know and understand is like a language is more than just symbols on a page. It's not just black words on the white, but it's tendencies of a nation. It's the senses of a nation. What is the smells of that nation when you hit the land? What is the music, the sounds of the nation when you hit the land? And you can build all of that into a course, tapping into the affordances we find in technology. So one sample we showed, again, as Jessica spoke to, we showed a plethora of samples of artifacts from courses that we both designed. As you see on Jessica's side, there was kind of just this, beautiful, the words translated. So often back in the day, or even at present now, you sit in a language course here at BYU, and you're looking at the language word, and then its translation is directly there, but that's it. The content is just printed off on a page. And what we would do is we'd sit down with the professors and instructors and show them a new vision, the technology vision that you and I both sit in now. So we would take kind of these words, and what we would do is move them into interactives and tap them into the LMS with these LTIs so they can listen to the word, they can speak the word, they can have instant feedback, they have visuals. So now it's not just words on a page, but they're tapping into the nation.
Yeah, so, we're kind of, I love this visual for us because I feel like what we're doing is kind of bridging the gap. Forever, language has been like, you can't learn a language online, it's impossible. It's only something you're going to do if you don't have a real live teacher in the same room as you. But what we're doing is showing that actually some things are done better using technology, and some things are done better in the classroom depending on your objective. And so what we're kind of doing is building a gap between language methodologies and instructional design. That's what we presented on.
So this was my first time going to AECT. I participated virtually last year. But just a word to the whole imposter syndrome thing. After you spend like 300 hours on a topic, like chances are high that you'll feel more comfortable talking about it with people. You know? And so like when you hear everybody's expertise, it's like overwhelming, but like they all spent time on it and you can just glean their highlights, and it's a really awesome, thing to participate in. So this is actually paper one of my dissertation. And by checking my spam, I found out that this was accepted for publication a few weeks ago. I didn't even know that. So the focus here, as you can see, online learning for first generation and underrepresented minoritized students. Obviously, there's a lot of appeal, a lot of great reasons of why online learning is, beneficial for everyone. And it can be even more so for some in these populations. It's also clear that there are challenges to anyone in online learning. And sometimes, like they just presented, when you overcome these barriers, like you can get these benefits that you wouldn't even get in person, but sometimes there are barriers to get there. And so I wanted to identify by searching through the literature what some of these barriers are, so that therefore we could try to help overcome them and make this learning more accessible to these students. So these are the actual research questions, is what challenges they are and how they fit within the model of student engagement that many here, Rick West, Charles Graham, and others have participated in creating that model. This is just the model itself without my intervention with it. It's kind of looking at what factors, like they call these facilitators of engagement, play and affect student engagement, which therefore can affect the outcomes or their performance. And now there is a fourth element. Rick, I don't know if you know that off the top of your head. Jared Borb added a fourth element to that.
Which one, the learner characteristics, personal environment, and environment?
The facilitators, yeah. One of them got split. What is that?
Background, maybe?
Is it background? Okay, I don't know, because I didn't.
Yeah, they differentiate that from the characteristics, like experience versus like.
Background versus characteristics. Okay, so that happened after I was already into this. So kind of long story short, because we're summarizing, by looking through the literature, I can go backwards first. There were differing outcomes with it, or different findings, but generally speaking, then these students tended to have more challenges with performance, grades, attendance, attrition, like just graduation, completing courses, things like that. But then divided into these various areas were student challenges that just appeared in literature, that they were either unique to these student populations or they were exacerbated by their personal circumstances. Language and linguistics can include not just like a second language learning, but even like jargon of university and, like terms that other people are used to hearing. Motivation, they can be highly motivated, but sometimes it can be overwhelming. And so the motivation kind of can drop. Sense of belonging, learner readiness, mental health, attitude, also included imposter syndrome, since we're addressing that, I'll point it out. And then also the digital divide often refers to access to not only devices, but access to technology and actual internet or even maintenance of those things. That was obviously highlighted, unfortunately, with COVID. Economic barriers, family support can be tremendous and awesome, or it can be more challenging. Oftentimes in online learning, then racism kind of can disappear, or it can rear its head. And there's different culture issues that can be, again, to a person's native culture, or it can be the learning culture and education. Other things that we most normally would think that we have impact on are the course design, facilitating instructor and peer interaction, and the course load. And so what I will not get into are all of these recommendations in each of these areas that I researched, trying to say beyond what we would normally think that as designers or instructors we can have an impact on, then there are all these other areas and ways that we can try to help support these students for their success in online learning.
So starting right off on the overcoming imposter syndrome, I decided really last minute that I was going to submit a poster presentation by myself, finish it all. I think Jason read through it maybe once and just submitted it. But I had been to ACT the year before and did a roundtable, and that was a great experience. And so it wasn't like scary to do it and to try to do it on my own. But yeah, it was good to do it on my own, but also once it got to it, it was like, oh, this is just by myself. I have to do this all by myself. But it was good. A poster. So this is what it was about. I'm gonna come back to this, how I got involved in the project. So I was in the project management class and I worked on, it's called Playable Case Studies. It's an interdisciplinary group at BYU that works on developing some simulations that are in courses at BYU and beyond. And then because I was working as project manager, I was interested in the research and got involved in the research and writing for publication about what we were doing. And so the poster, because it's interdisciplinary, it wasn't, I was involved in a publication that was like for English and like professional communication and a conference that was like not connected to our area. So that's another reason I proposed it by myself. The simulation that this poster was about is web-based. Students are in a course on presentations. They act as like a student intern in city government. They research about oral presentation and they have to decide how to present to the city council, how the city council should decide to spend this little bit of budget money that's left on one or the other. And so this is just one image from the simulation, and so they get emails and messages. They can look at the city council. There's this little Twitter feed on the side. And we implemented it in a class, like I said, on presentation. And then I was there in the class as the students were running it and talking to the students, and then we did a debrief afterwards about what they thought about the simulation. And that is, we've worked on another publication for that as well. There's a link to the full poster when this goes out. And I have the full poster here, and you're all going to want to see it and touch it. I'm going to tell you what. As Peter said earlier, I am the poster child of what not to do when you have a poster. So I want to talk about this a little bit more than just my project. So due to some extenuating circumstances before the conference and my ability to procrastinate, as you know, everybody's familiar with, I was like, great, I will just finish the poster, we'll print it in Las Vegas, lots of print places. And this was after I had great advice from Rick. Follow his advice about printing it on fabric, and then you can fold it up and put it in your suitcase, and you don't have to be one of those people that hauls it around like awkward on a plane or something. So that was the advice, and I did ask about that. BYU doesn't print on fabric, apparently. You have to do that ahead of time. Anyway, so I was like, fine, I'll just print it there. It'll be fine. There was some communication issues, some confusion. I decided to print it. The poster session was on Monday, the first day of the conference. In the afternoon, by like 11:30, I realized it still hasn't been printed. And so the people were really great about printing it, but it cost me $175 to print the poster.
Typical prices.
And typical is like what, 60, between 45 and 65, you know, somewhere in there. So yeah, some people were like, I would have not printed the poster, but I was like stressed and I really did want to print the poster and like have a good conversation with people. So I printed the poster. It's here, you can all touch it. My kids are gonna take prom photos in front of it. So my house is gonna need to see it. Anyway, I put a few links. The design of the poster, I followed a video about creating research posters. I think everybody's familiar with the kind of older design of research posters that have too much text and stuff on them. So I did print the poster. I took it to the poster presentation session, which is a gallery people just walk through. And this one was great. There was food there. Had great conversations with people. I was really glad I printed the poster. Since then, I've already made connections with people like through LinkedIn and people at other universities that I'm talking with. And I connected some other people from this university and another university that I'm not really involved with, but I was able to connect them up to talk about some student development things.
And so you're out of time.
Yeah, so don't print on site, but come see my poster. It's here. Thank you for hauling it back, whoever brought it back for me. Because it's in a FedEx bag. So.
Before I get into this, I'm gonna ask a favor, Rebecca, can you write on the board over here? We're gonna just do a really quick activity. We're gonna tell you what to write. It will be really simple and easy. Spelling ability. We won't judge you. So there were lots of different presentations. I just want you guys to name off some of the different types of presentations, not the focus of the research, like, was it a concurrent session? What were some of the types that you guys heard that people were sharing? And if you did a presentation, feel free to yell that out. And you did.
Posters.
So posters,
Table.
concurrent, roundtable.
Competition.
See how fast Rebecca can write.
What type did you do, Tyler?
So we
Who
had
did the weird one?
The weird one.
the weird, you mean the impact?
The impact, yeah.
Impact session, which is more of an active session. Okay, so we've got roundtable, poster,
The
concurrent.
way to think of impact is it's a 1 hour workshop. Instead of a 3 hour, it's a 1 hour.
Okay.
Workshop.
Because they do have workshops. No one presented in a workshop that I know of.
Panel.
Panels,
I mean, the faculty.
Competition.
competitions, which I'm gonna get to in just a second. Any others? I think that's most of them, but we'll add if we remember.
About plenary.
That wasn't a title. Thanks so much, Rebecca.
Yeah, Rebecca.
So Heather Francis and I, we did the AECT Design and Development Competition, which is put on by the Design and Development Division. So there are divisions at AECT. And because our work is very much in design, we talked about it and we thought this would be a really great experience. And really what it is that you're given a challenge, an educational challenge, and they have a real client, and their client is with NATO, NATO ACT. And so, which is, I'm not going to go into that. I don't remember all of the words right now, but the challenge that we were given this last year, I'm going to go into this. The challenge, this is the problem statement. So you're given a problem statement. And so we had to develop training to develop confident, effective, and capable of cross-domain thinking and acting employees or staff of NATO. And they needed a rigorous leadership training. And what we actually proposed to them needed to be about 10% NATO information, 15% leadership content, and then 75% on the program, what we were proposing. And this has 3 different phases in the competition, and each phase gets a little bit more restrictive. So the first phase is your preliminary design abstract. And so you only have to give them 1,500 words. And I've put in QR codes to our first and second phase abstract, or what we've proposed. So for us, it turned out to be about 6 pages for the phase 1. Then from all of the people who propose something for phase 1, they go through and they take, I think it's up to 8 teams. And so it's 2 people per team. That's the most that you can do. Can be within the same university, or it can be if you go in and want to combine with someone else, they'll put you with someone else. And then they take 8 teams and they go on to phase 2. And in phase 2, you're given a mentor in the field. And that mentor works with you to develop your final design paper, which it has a limit of 5,000 words. Ours ended up being, I think, like 29 pages long after we added in all of our images and different things. And then from there, they choose 3 teams to go on to the phase 3 part of the competition, which is the actual presentation. So they say that if you've gone on to phase 3, you're considered a finalist or a winner. But then at the AECT convention, you have the opportunity to meet the other teams, to get to know all the mentors. And it's really quite a big experience that you have. And then you give your presentation, which is 20 minutes long, and answer questions on it, and you're judged on that. And then from that, they choose a best presentation award. So that's kind of in a nutshell the competition. These are just a few images of some of the things that we created or from our presentations. This was from our presentation, and we had proposed micro-credentials as a solution for them to develop soft skills. And then this was just an image of what that would look like in a mobile environment, because for the development of soft skills and micro-credentials, it would need to be in a mobile environment. And this was our learner journey that we had mapped out. So kind of at the end, Heather, was it worth it going through all this work? Because it was a lot of work. And so these were the pros that we had listed. It was really an authentic learning experience for us. There was a real client, a real need, like we felt like we were hopefully meeting a need. and that potentially our design could be used. In fact, 2 years ago, the design that they used has been implemented and they're evaluating it right now in NATO ACT. So there's the potential to really have impact. It's a rapid design cycle, which I wanted that experience of going through a really quick design cycle. And even though it was more design, we didn't actually implement, it was still a great experience. And I love seeing the connection between both design, theory, evaluation, and then also having to create a budget, which all of these things you'll actually do in a master's project. This is almost like a mini master's project without the actual implementation and going through the evaluation. So the mentoring was a big thing for us. We really wanted the chance to get a mentor outside of our department. And so we had a great mentor from Yale University, and she was awesome and is a designer there. You also, if you get to the third phase, you get free AECT registration. You also get to meet really great people if you go to that, if you get to that third phase. You really get to know the other teams and the other mentors. And then you also have the potential to get up to 3 credits of 693R credit here in the department, which we chose to do. And if you have questions about that, I can explain it, or you can ask Peter and I'm sure he'll explain it. So the cons, it was a lot of work, like a lot of work. And it also took, I didn't put this on here, it took a lot of our time at the convention. So we could have been doing other things at the convention, but we were doing this, but it was worth it. So, and sometimes the information wasn't super organized on their website. So, but that was pretty much it. But overall, it was a good experience.
Hey, everybody, sign up later today for AECT next year, okay? I hope you'll seriously consider it. And we again thank all of these wonderful students that shared what they did. Let's give them one more big round, shall we?
Maybe I can just mention that I had a colleague come up to us. This was actually a year ago, but wasn't quite this conference, but we hear it every conference. But we had someone come up to us and said, every time I see something awesome being presented, I find out it was BYU students.
Yes.
So go students, and thank you for presenting at national conference.
Stephanie, this is the only conference there is in the world, right?
Oh yeah, there are no others.
Yeah.
So actually, I did gather information. We ran out of time, but I've gathered information from our department about conferences that they attend, additional ones, and we'll probably put that out in a future the IPSO newsletter.
I said that because I knew she was working hard on it, and most of these conferences really go out of their way for grad students. My daughter is on a plane right now to Baltimore, Maryland, at a big conference, and they pretty much let her in free. And the students I took last year, they let them in free. You still have to do a little bit, but anyway.
I was just wondering about if there's funding available to help.
And Peter, did you hear that? Money. Does the department help? Are there some applications?
So there's an application, you'll see, pay attention, don't ignore ever these emails, right? But she'll put out there, here's the deadlines, coming up for scholarships and those ones. We try to do what we can to help, defray some of the cost of going to conference. This time, sometimes it's direct funding support, other times it's things, or in addition, like we drove 3 cars down, which was more expensive than us flying, just the faculty, but we did that so that we could take students. We won't be driving to Orlando. But we'll do things that as long as you're presenting, that's typically the criteria for being able to get some funding.
Volunteering.
Volunteering.
Tyler about.
What's the acceptance rejection rate? I mean, is there? But with AECT, most of the application proposals, would you say, or?
I think it's around a 60% acceptance rate. So, I mean, you got to put some work into it, but if you put some work into it, like, who was it? Krista was talking about, you've read something and you've studied up on it, then you have a good chance of getting.
Thank you again, all of you. And then these slides will be made available on. Okay, well, he is so amazing. Thank you. So we can grab these slides and then make sure you're responsive to our moderators' questions. Let's have a blessing on the food and close our meeting. Evie.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this day. We're grateful to this program. We're grateful for the IP&T program and for